long time ago, Dimple suggested that we do this in a list. I think it was, wasn't it you? Did you suggest the list? Pooja did. Okay. I knew it was someone, my eyeballs went in vaguely this direction. But as soon as I said it, I was like, no, it wasn't you. But you think it's a good idea too, don't you? Yeah, I bet you do. Okay. So instead of a paragraph, what if it were a proper list? You guys know how to do lists in HTML? Again, don't copy what I'm typing here. I'm just demonstrating. UL for an unordered list, or OL for an ordered list, basically whether it's bulleted or numbered. And then each item inside the list is an LI, or list item. So that's how we make a list. So what if you added all this stuff in a list? What if each new person, each new user got its own unordered list, and then each separate stat got its own list item? So for example, and then maybe we put a fancy div there that just shows the color. Something like that. Can we do it? Are we fancy enough? We're pretty fancy, I have to say. I think we can do it. All right. Where to start? Did I actually change anything here? No. Okay. So maybe instead of a paragraph, we create an unordered list. Where do I start? This is overwhelming. I need to add a bunch of ULs, a bunch of LIs. Where do I even start? What do? Remember Mario and Luigi? We break it down, right? Where do I start? I no longer want to add a paragraph. I want to add an unordered list. What do you say, Evelyn?
What if you like similar as we did with paragraphs, so like whatever we call it, document, dot create element, OL or UL.
So instead of create element P, just create element UL. That ought to do it. Should I call it UL or list? I like to call it list. So now we have a list instead of a paragraph. Neat. And sooner or later, we're going to want to append that list to users, right? But now for each one of those things, we want to make a new LI. So we're going to have to create more elements, right? So let's do name. How'd you do this? It's another new element, right? What do you think? What are we doing, Jacques? What did we just do? We created a new UL by saying document.createElement UL. Now we want a bunch of list items, which are LIs. So what would we type? Nearly the same thing, but we're creating a list item instead of a list. Yeah. Instead of UL, it's just LI for list item. Yep. So let's make const name item equals document.createElement. And it's not a UL, it's an LI. Then we can set the text content on that. Const, oh, sorry, not const. So we already have name item, right? Now we can set its text content to, I'll use my backticks, a template literal. name colon $, curly braces, Jacques. Seem legit? Now what's going to happen if I just leave it there? What's going to happen when I submit the form? I'm creating a list. I'm creating the name item and putting name Jacques. Sorry, I meant to, I can't just, that's not a variable. Actually, if I did it right now, I would get an error, right? I meant username. And then I pinned the list. What would happen? Say that again, Rodrigo? It'd be empty. It's empty. It's also complaining about our favorite color here. Yeah, it's empty. What's the problem? Why was it empty? How did you know?
You're not appending the list element to the list.
Aha. We're appending the list to the div, but the list is empty. We created this list item, but that list item is not inside the list. It's just floating out in space somewhere. Right? So how do I fix that?
You append the list item to the list.
So append it, right? Just like we appended the list to users. We can say list.append child name item. Make sense? So when you do create element, it creates this element, but it's just some JavaScript variable floating out there in space. It's just some object. It's not actually anywhere in the DOM. We have to add it to the DOM by appending it to a parent. So here, our list, which is also just floating out in the ether for now, we can append name item to that, and then list is no longer empty, so when we stick it on the page, we actually get something. Let's make sure it still works. Mad dog, Maddie. She's goth. Her favorite color is black. There we go. Totally worked. Yeah, Pooja.
So when I added the unordered list, when I refresh my page, I have a bullet point already on my page. So how do you get rid of that, and why does that happen?
When you first load the page, it's there. So probably you actually put the list in here. Did you actually do that? I was just typing that in there to show us what we wanted the outcome to be. Yeah. You dig? So we can do the same with age. Let's just make a new list item. We'll call it age item. Oh, here's a neat trick if you're using Visual Studio Code. I'm going to highlight name. Then I'm going to hold Option and highlight it here. Look at that. My cursor's both places. Holy smokes. Now I'm going to just put my cursor there. I'm going to hold Option, put my cursor there, backspace right over that, say capital A, age. Oh man, except actually it's just called age. But pretty neat, right? So now we need to append that as well. List.append child age. Because we're appending, it's not going to replace the contents with that, right? It's just going to add it to the end. Its name, TJ Maxx, age, favorite color, red, go. Oh, shucks. Failed to execute append child on node. Parameter 1 is not of type node. What? So it sounds like the argument is the wrong thing, right? It's expecting an HTML element as its argument, and I didn't pass it that. You see the problem? And it said on line 21. Right. What's age? It's a number, or maybe it's a string, but it sure as heck isn't an HTML element. Yeah, I need age item. So kind of a confusing error message, but if you break it down and look at the right line, it does give you a clue. So let's refresh and try that again. TJ Maxx, age, whatever. Favorite color, purple. There we go. You know what would be really cool? If we committed our changes before we moved on. That'd be cool. All right, what was the last thing we did? Git log. Use a color input for favorite color. So all this list business is new. So git add to move from working copy to staging area. Git commit. Display users in an unordered list.